20 veterans a day in America kill themselves. 6,000 veterans a year take their own life. We lose more people to suicide in America than in every car accident across this country. Ken said, we used to have the #1 community mental health system in America. We don't any longer. We have the lowest Medicaid reimbursement state of any state in America. Mental health centers hang on. Sometimes we have 60 people in need of acute mental health care in ERs. Sometimes they're there for a day, sometimes they're there for 2 weeks. If that were a physical health need, if that were a risk of a heart attack, how long would we tolerate that? I can tell you from my travels, it has changed me. I see what I never saw. It's hiding in plain sight. Linda Bishop is the victim of a system that didn't start with the court system. It started with all of us who didn't pay attention, who didn't understand, who didn't see, who didn't engage. There was a point in the back of the room. I know that from my own family. I didn't see mental illness for what it was. I see it now. I touch it, I hug it. If you knew the number of kids who come up to me, I'm a perfect stranger to them after I talk about my own family. And I assure these kids I will not judge them. What they share with me would break your heart. Some kids come up to me after I speak, high school kids, tell me they tried to kill themselves within the last year. Sometimes they say, can I give you a hug? Sometimes they say, you look like you could use a hug. Would you like one? They say yes. We need to pay attention not just to Linda Bishop's case, which is beyond disturbing, but to the Linda Bishops who are out there now, who are progressing to illness and through illness. I'm not sure we're ready to deal with it. I'm not sure our system is ready to deal with it, but mostly I'm not sure we're ready to deal with it. If your family's been touched, as many of you may be, you get it. If your family hasn't been touched, you may not fully comprehend it. And I'm on a mission, frankly, to make sure we start a different conversation around mental illness. I spoke at a high school, and I'll end with this, when I say we failed Linda Bishop. I spoke at a high school in New Hampshire that had 1,400 students. At lunchtime, I spoke with the counselors. I said, what percentage of those kids that I spoke to have a diagnosable mental health problem? Not a bad Tuesday, where they fail some exam. I mean, diagnosable. He said to me, well, my colleagues can tell you if they disagree, but I've been here a long time. I would say 25 to 30% of those kids you spoke to today have a diagnosable mental health problem. Do the math on 1,400. I said, if we put that on the front page of the newspaper, would people believe it? He said, no. 65% of the men tonight at the Concord State Prison have a diagnosable mental health problem. They didn't wake up with it and have it happen to them on the first day they brought it with them. Jails and prisons are the largest providers of mental health services in America. You think that's a good model? That's a fiscally sound model? That means we're not doing our job. I don't just mean the mental health community. God knows they're overstretched. But the rest of us, myself included, who don't speak up, who don't understand, who assume someone else will solve that problem for that person or that family. There's no one that can watch that film. If Linda Bishop were here tonight and said to her, we met our obligation to you, Linda. We did what we should have done, Linda. We didn't. And even though we weren't personally accountable, unless we change, unless we demand change, there's going to be a movie after movie after movie of another Linda Bishop. That's what I mean when I say we failed her. I include myself in that. We need to change the conversation approach, and only when we do that, only when people say, my brother, my sister, my cousin, myself, when we say, well, I didn't know so many people were suffering. We need to change the system to receive these people and to change their lives and the lives of everyone who loves them. Everybody with a mental health problem, who you help the 10 or 20 people who love that person. That's what we need to do, and we need to start now. And so we don't have to watch tragic movies like this. I was thinking of Joan watching that. I know she's lived it, but it's hard to see it, knowing that it shouldn't have happened.
Thank you, John. And before we have the next question, just a couple of quick points, which is that those 46 people that are waiting in the emergency room tonight, there's probably not going to be a movie about them. But that we failed them. What we're doing is wrong medically. We know it's wrong medically. It's wrong legally. We know it's wrong legally. Ethically, it's wrong. Morally, it's wrong. And economically, it's wrong. But this issue's been going on for 5+ years. And it's not just in New Hampshire, and as John said, we wouldn't tolerate it for any other illness. The other point that I want to make is, Ed, you also raised the question about suicide. And I would say that NAMI New Hampshire and other groups have been trying to tie very specifically to suicide as a health outcome for our mental health system and our Medicaid system, and have not been able to do that. And you know, I think it's again sort of an example of this, of the discrimination that's faced relative to the clear tie between mental illness and suicide and/or substance use, and not wanting to look at that as a health outcome, which is, you know, if we know what it is, then how do we work backwards from that? And what do we need to do to work backwards from that? So, sure, next question.
First, Joan, I wanted to thank you for sharing Linda's story with us. I think it's really an important message, and it was very touched my heart. And I hope to see more movies like this. I think it's really critical to get this message out here. I also think that all of us in this room are here either because our lives have been affected by mental illness, or we just really want to know how to help. So, not being a credentialed clinical professional in mental health, what can we do? Like, where do you start in your community to try to help? And just, what can we do? You can't just walk into families in transition and say, what can I do? You know, I mean, there's regulations to protect people's privacy. So where do you start?
So I'm going to start with the gentleman from Rochester, and I'm going to give you a very personal example of how I live my life. Yes, I happen to work in community mental health, but almost every day I touch the life of someone who's not necessarily a patient at our mental health center, but someone who I notice who's struggling, someone who I decide on Saturday to take to a movie, a young woman who grew up with me on the same street who I knew had cerebral palsy and never knew she had been at New Hampshire Hospital. I try to take notice of people. I try to touch people in whatever way that I can, because as he said, the idea that we're relational people and that people make a difference in people's lives, and it takes more than a therapist, it takes more than a good God, it takes more than you can imagine to make us all whole people that function and enjoy life. And so I would challenge us all in everything that we do to take notice, to touch people, to be real, to be honest, to trust. And that would be my message that I would give to you.
I would add 2 things to that. That one, this is a civil rights issue, plain and simple. And like other civil rights issues in this country, they were only solved by people who weren't necessarily directly touched, bringing their voices and their power to changing that. And then the second thing that I would say is that it doesn't take a credential, it doesn't take an LMNOP, just echoing what Maggie said, to save somebody's life or make a difference in their life. One of the other things that sort of has changed since this movie was made is that New Hampshire has a much stronger system of peer support, which wasn't really available when Linda was in the hospital. And that might be something that could make a difference for somebody that's refusing those other treatments. And Shelley had sort of mentioned about what alternatives to treatment there are.
Hi. Joan, it's great to see you.
Thank you, Anne. Good to see you. Thank you. So I've been touched by mental illness. I have an anxiety disorder. My kid has an anxiety disorder. My mom has major depression, and it goes on and on for generations and generations. My question has to do with the dehospitalization movement of the 70s and 80s, and you have now more community mental health. How do people access those services? I've been finding it really difficult to find services for my kid. And the only reason I'm able to do it is because I go to court and I know a lot of people and I ask people, you know, for help. But I'm just wondering, you know, I know that we have all these posters up about, you know, the 5 signals of symptoms or whatever to ask people about how they're doing and the symptoms of mental illness. But I'm wondering, you know, what's being done to publicize where community resources are available.
I somehow always draw a short straw. No, I would say that accessibility and community mental health centers in New Hampshire, we have 10 of us, and they're scattered geographically so that everybody can have access, ideally. That's not to say that there isn't a workforce shortage. As Chief Justice Broderick said, he goes out to high schools and talks to them about his story and about knowing the 5 signs. I go to high schools and say, would anyone in this audience like to go into mental health, please? And if not, why not? And come talk to me afterwards, because I'd really like you to be part of a solution. And so accessibility and community mental health centers who have traditionally been rather fragile financially, particularly as the Medicaid rates stay low and as rules change and administrative burdens become more significant, we are challenged to get the word out there. Spending money on television ads or advertising or anything like that was never heard of. You didn't want to advertise the mental health center, right? You have to advertise the mental health center, people aren't going to know you're there. So I think you've seen, and I've only been doing this since 1982, a shift so that we're out there, we're there with NAMI, we're there doing walks, we're there at every public appearance. I've had to go on TV, more things than I would have ever imagined in my whole life to try to say we're here, come, call this number, and we'll help you as best we can, knowing that resources are pretty tight and the workforce is a real issue.
The other thing I would also add to that is to not stop asking questions. Do not stop advocating. If what you're looking for does not exist, let's build it. Let's create it. The places that we're at now, we didn't get to because we're just waiting for someone to have an answer. We built it, right? We looked at the needs, and a lot of things come from very grassroots operations. And so I would say from a clinical and professional and a family member standpoint, when my brother was diagnosed, he was an adult, and no one had to tell us anything. And I can tell you, he's never signed a waiver asking anybody to give me information. You know what I did? I called providers, and I said, "This is who I am, and my brother's in the community. What can I do for him?" So keep asking questions and keep advocating and keep saying something. One thing we were talking about was I mentioned, what can I do? I'm not licensed, I'm not a professional. One thing I always tell people as well is to, when you see something that doesn't feel right, when someone's making fun of something else, there's a lot of stigmatizing language out there regarding mental health, say something about it, educate somebody that that's not okay, and it's not going to be okay with you. That's one of the decisions I made a long time ago, was that what I saw, what I was feeling, not okay. It was not okay. And so I call people out and I say, it's not okay with me that we're talking like that. We gotta talk about this differently.
You know, I just want to add one thing, and I think we can all relate to it. If we met somebody tonight who had heart disease, and we were talking about that to a third person, we'd say, I met somebody who has heart disease. If we met somebody with mental health problems, we're likely to say, I met somebody who is mentally ill. Not who has, but who is. My son always says to me, Dad, why do people conflate mental health with who you are as a person? One thing that came across me tonight in that film is Linda Bishop was a really smart person, talented. She saw things that other people didn't see, and she understood the world she was living in at a level that many don't. But she was plagued by illness. She wasn't her illness. I've been spending a lot of time on this campaign, the 5 signs of mental illness. We've given out almost 400,000 of these. On the back is something called REACT. How do we react? Answer this question. If somebody walked down these stairs right now, they were limping, my guess is a lot of you would jump up, you wouldn't even know the person. You'd say, "Have you fallen? Are you okay? Do you need a doctor?" If somebody was sitting down here quietly crying, we'd say, "He or she's entitled to privacy, leave them alone." That's not the way to deal with it, by the way. Until we start dealing with the root cause of people hiding, which is they're afraid they'll pay a price, they won't come out. They won't. And so that's what we need to start to do. We need to start to talk about it and normalize it and help people. And I believe to my core that if we could solve this problem with more resources, which of course would help, we would have solved it by now. It's been decades, it's been generations. The reason we're not dealing with it is because we are still hiding it. We are still hiding it. I know that Congressman Kennedy of Massachusetts, a year ago in November, and he's working on parity between mental health and physical health insurance coverage. No small issue. He said to me, "John, I don't care what they tell you, there's a law that says there's parity, but there isn't parity." Insurance companies push back. Why do we need parity, by the way? We don't have parity for heart disease or bad back. It's just coverage. We treat mental health differently even when we provide parity. Why is that? When I go out and speak to groups, and I'll ask all of you here, why do we stigmatize mental illness? Why do we? There must be a good reason for it. No one has ever raised a hand and told me what it is. If we can't explain it, why do we tolerate it? Your point. Why do we tolerate it? When I said you we all fail in the Bishop, in many ways we fail every day. The question is not what will somebody like Ken Norton do to solve the problem, as important as he is. What will we do to change the conversation so that people can finally say, my family, my best friend, or myself, and we can't get coverage. We can't see a doctor. I've had a mother break down in an elevator who said, my son's going to kill himself. I read his diary. He tells me he's going to kill himself. He's going to college in 3 weeks. I said, ma'am, have you seen someone? She said, they tell me it'll take 6 months. We tolerate that, folks. If that was a heart attack that was soon to happen, we would tolerate it for 5 seconds. But it's mental illness, and so somehow it's treated differently. We, all of us, I include myself, we allow that. That's why there are 40 or 60 people in emergency rooms in acute need of mental health care tonight, or next week, or last week, because we allow it. That's why. We need to speak up and speak out. Governor Sununu had the school safety task force. It made 59 recommendations for public schools. 8 of them dealt with mental health. The only recommendation Governor Sununu talked about when he met with us for the last meeting was social and emotional learning, starting in grade school. He's right about it. Governor Sununu gets that. And I agree with him. That's what we need to do. We need to start at the beginning. What we tend to do is wait till the problem is almost uncontrollable and then fret that we can't fix it. We need to start sooner.